Vince Dunn on LTIR. Let's talk about what exactly that means and how it's going to impact the Kraken on the remainder of their homestand.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you your favorite team every single day. My name, Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, also the founder of Black Rosie Media, where we aim to empower Black women and melanated creators in sports media. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we're going to get started is with not some great news. Coming up is the Vince Dunn bobblehead day. Super excited about that. Unfortunately, we won't have Vince Dunn in the game because he was added to the long-term injured reserve. Now, if you were able to watch the game against Philadelphia, he took kind of an awkward fall, it looked like his left leg came from up under him. He slid across. He went to jump up and reach for, to try and palm down a puck as it was entering the defensive zone, and he kind of gets upended. He played a little bit after that, did not play, though, the third period. The LTIR retroactive to October 17th. So we're going to miss him until at least, mid-November. And that does mean Cale Fleury comes up from Coachella Valley. But, this is tough. We didn't see a lot of Vince Dunn in the preseason because he was coming back from an injury he suffered last year. And, it's never great for an individual just on a human level, but especially not for an athlete when they have kind of multiple nagging injuries. We've been here with Andre Burakovsky, with Vince Dunn. He's one of our leaders. He, is a really important part of what we try to do on the defensive side of things on that top line. I was really excited to see how he would come back renewed under this system of Dan Bylsma and company. But unfortunately, we'll have to delay whatever groove or, comeback Vince Dunn might have had from his last injury, because it seems that he's injured once again. Believe the term Dan Bylsma used is middle body, so that's different. Upper and lower is usually what we get. So I don't know if it was something that was, we just don't know. So it was an awkward fall. Not sure if it agitated something that was bothering him before, but this is tough. Vince Dunn can be very effective for us offensively. And, I've talked about how on the true defensive side of things, I don't consider him a full on liability, but we also know that he's been very frank that that's a part of his game that he is growing. So Cale Fleury mixes in, and we'll see what happens from here. The Seattle Kraken, as we have talked about, have been experimenting with different lines. And again, some of this you just have to do because of injury, as is the case now with Vince Dunn. But some of this you also do to get a spark on the offensive side. And we've seen that happen for the Seattle Kraken as well. But, two big wins for the Seattle Kraken in the last handful of games. The game against the Flyers, a 6-4 win, just kind of a wild game. In that game, shots on goal were 29-25 in favor of the Kraken. The power play, 1 for 5 for Seattle, 1 for 4 for Philly. Giveaways for the Kraken, 12-10 for Philly, takeaways 8 for Seattle versus 9 for the Flyers. Face-off wins, advantage to Philly, 54.4% overall. We continue to see Jordan Eberle have a really good game. A lot of people are talking and starting to ask Dan Bylsma about that new line that has Shane Wright actually centering Eberle and McCann. Both Eberle, McCann, and Wright all scored a goal in the game against Philly. Oliver Bjorkstrand kind of closed it out, the maestro, to keep it nice and respectable. Here's the thing, and we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about playing the right way with an R-I-G-H-T, no W. We're going to talk about playing the right way and what Kraken hockey, baby. Now Dan Bylsma knows that phrase. But what Kraken hockey is surmising to be this season. We've talked about it a few times here and there on the podcast, but I really want to get into it because I do think this is an exciting kind of hockey, and to boot, I like that the Kraken are buying in. Philipp Grubauer played that game against Philly. He had an .840 save percentage, 21 saves against 25 shots faced. The Calgary game, completely different game, still close, but very tight and stingy on the goal front. Despite both teams having just above 20 shots on goal per game, this was a final overtime game, 2-1 for the Kraken. Eberle comes up big time in overtime. I also like that goal got started because there were multiple players around the net to pick up the rebound. Chandler Stevenson is the player that got us on the board in regulation, an answer to Blake Coleman's goal roughly 6-7 minutes prior to. So not a response goal, but it was quite the response. Chandler Stevenson's first of the year, which means, of course, it's his first as a member of the Seattle Kraken. But this was a pretty even game. This is a Calgary Flames team. If you listen to our preview of the Pacific Division, no one really thought Calgary was going to get off to such a hot start. We had to cool them off a little. But the Seattle Kraken sitting 4-2. So what is it about how they're playing hockey, and why is it something that I think is, quote, playing the right way? We're going to talk about that and so much more on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. And today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Indeed. And if you need to hire, straight up, you need Indeed. And that is because when you're driven for the search for better and you want to hire, the best way is not to search for a candidate. It's actually to match. And Indeed can help you do that. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates super fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 150 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use it, the better it gets. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. You just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire, then you need Indeed. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, and you got to forgive me. The energy might not be exactly where I want it to be, but I'm in New York, and let's just say the New York Liberty have been partying it up after winning their first ever WNBA title. So I'm not necessarily partying, but I'm there for the party. And wow, something else. Congratulations to the New York Liberty. Great season for the Minnesota Lynx. Cannot wait for the next season. And of course, we have the Seattle Storm. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do. A little bit of a hybrid rebuild, I think, is what they're going through. I'll say it that way. But let's get into why I think this Seattle Kraken team is playing the right way. There was a conversation that reporters had with Jared McCann. And Darren, I haven't seen if he posted this article, but Darren, has been asking a specific series of questioning with regard to this team being able to find these gritty wins early in this season. And he talked about the difference, between kind of hoping you don't lose versus finding a way to win. And I think that's what we're seeing. And the players who've been with the Kraken, whether it's Darren again in his questioning that he's been asking, or just in, what they're able to say about this team so far, it's still early, only 4-2, but they're hitting and attacking the game in a different way. And I do think that has something to do with Dan Bylsma. Now, it's not necessarily an indictment or a direct comparison to what happened under Dave Haxtell. This is a new season and you've got some new players. Also, I think the performance of last season probably factors into at least why some of the returners feel the way they do about kind of finding ways to win games as opposed to hoping not to lose. And, that I think is a great way of saying or describing what some of the frustration for me was last season, because this team just, yes, we know there were the injuries. And I always say, let's try if we can to put that on the shelf, because there are just so many factors that go into that, right? But the team was not consistent in really important areas. Defensive areas stand out to me. Being able to be a fast team. And Dan Bylsma's approach to being fast is not just because, it's kind of a fun way. It's a fun way to approach a game. When you're constantly moving, you're getting downhill, so to speak. It's fun. It's exciting to play that way. It's exciting to watch. It's physically demanding, but you work yourself up to it. But another reason, and Jared McCann alluded to this as well, but when you are the attacker, when you're on the attack in hockey, that means you have the puck, right? You are able to control the cadence of the game, the flow of the game, and literally you have possession. So the other team has to be able to react and respond to what you're doing. And it quite literally already puts them on the back foot. Well, the Seattle Kraken, they can find ways to strike early. It's not as consistent as I would like it to be. But another thing, and I can't remember if it was McCann or someone else, but what the players are saying and breaking down is that, it's one thing to get an early lead, or quite honestly, I'll add this, it's one thing to be down super early. You have to approach the game, though, in a similar manner. And that's some of what was missing from the Kraken, according to, players like McCann. It's important to get after the game, because when you do that, you can control the pace, which is important. Another reason, though, that you like to see this Kraken team just playing more aggressive, playing more free, is that they are starting to solidify an identity as a team that's going to be hard to beat. And, we heard from some of the players that there were times last year where the scout was on the Kraken that, they might get ahead a little bit, or maybe they have to come from behind, but they can do that. The challenge or the area to expose as opposition is not necessarily if the Seattle Kraken can climb their way back in, but I guess it's about how they do it. Are they able to discern when they have to, quote unquote, manage the game, manage the shot clock, versus knowing that you have to create momentum to get what you want and to get what you expect? And so I think the Seattle Kraken team is very much still learning that process. But I like the direction under Dan Bylsma. I don't know if it was a concern, but something that I was curious about is that there's so many developmental people like Jessica Campbell and Dan Bylsma, who really lean into the development aspect, even at the NHL level. And so you wonder if that gives people what they need when it comes to effectively like a lethal instinct when the game is on the line. And these are regular season games. It's not that they don't matter. And the hype level is going to be so much bigger. so much louder, so much more pressure. So to cut your teeth early and try to find ways to kind of gut out these wins, I'm okay with it. I'm totally okay with that. So, but Eberle had a great point or a great game, great few games, and he's really leading by example. He talked to us before. We've talked about it on the podcast. He's not much of a rah captain or leader, but he's finding ways to impact the game. And Everett Fitzhugh said something to Mike Benton about Eberle's 7 years, I think it was, in the NHL with the Islanders. 5 of those 7 years, he was the top goal scorer for the Islanders. And so bringing some of that with him, a return to Jordan Eberle, it just really, I don't know that it's making me mad, maybe a little bit, but it's just a little frustrating while also being super cool and vindicating that we're getting this performance when Eberle was finally named captain. I don't know when it went into the decisions, certainly not the conversations on why a captain wasn't announced. But if Eberle is going to play this way, this hot, and hopefully throughout the rest of the season, listen, I'll take it. That is the primary goal. So I do think that they're playing the right way. They're hustling. They're blocking shots. Lots of praise for Matty Beniers the other night, blocking a big shot. We've been getting good goaltending. Philipp Grubauer still has fewer wins than Joey Daccord, who got the Calgary win and then got the zoomies, as he said, as he went to go celebrate in the huddle and then just completely bombed out. He bounced off of them and onto the ice. So, this team is having fun forechecking and fast. 3 Fs. Sometimes I say them in a different order, but I love this for the Kraken. I love this for us who watch the Seattle Kraken. And there's still several other gears. This is not even the best Kraken hockey, but the brushes of brilliance, as I like to say, the brushes of brilliance are absolutely there. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what the Seattle Kraken are able to do this week as they take on the Colorado Avalanche on Tuesday. But let's get you out of here with another. And coming up next on Locked on Kraken, I'm actually going to play an interview with Jack LaFontaine. He's one of the netminders for the Kansas City Mavericks. All that and more coming up on Locked on Kraken. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season and win big when you return to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game and you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $2,000 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Thanks as always for making Locked on Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, always appreciative for you stopping by Locked on Kraken. Make sure you also check out Locked on NHL, our overall podcast covering the National Hockey League. And then, of course, you have shows like Locked on Kraken that drill deep into your specific favorite team every single day. When we're closing out the episode, I want to get back to our Maverick Mondays. The Kansas City Mavericks are our ECHL team. They have 4 points in the standings right now, 2 wins, no losses. The goal differential, though, is something I think they're going to want to clean up. 10 goals for, 7 against. That is tied for third behind the Rapid City Rush, who've given up 11 goals, and the Wichita Thunder, who have given up 10 goals. The other team to give up 7 goals, the Utah Grizzlies. So a little bit of work to do on the defensive side of things. Jack LaFontaine is a goaltender who we saw play a little bit with Coachella Valley. And, I think he has an interesting pathway. He has an interesting approach to goaltender competition. And working more as a tandem than as seeing that as someone who's standing in your way from a start. I enjoyed our conversation during training camp, and I'm going to take you to that interview right now.
For me on a personal note, this is the first time in my pro career where I'm returning to a team, so there's obviously a sense of security when you're coming back, and obviously, Disco and Jess got promoted to the NHL level, so there's that familiarity there, so that's also very nice. Do I think there's a twist? No, I think the goal for this organization has always been the same from top to bottom. It's, to keep on doing what we're doing on a daily basis and make a push for the ultimate goal, which is to win a Stanley Cup. Well, communications is key. Like, that's for anything you do, whether it's hockey, business, relationships. Like, communication is key. So when you have that communication top to bottom, you have the same objectives, same goals, same values, and that leads to success, right? So when you have those objectives in mind, then you have a plan and a process, and it's easy to attack your goals. So I think that's why, from top to bottom, whether it's Kansas City, Coachella, or Seattle, it's very organized, and the communication has been nothing but stellar. Well, it wasn't just me, it was my partner, Cale Morris, and Cale is one of my best buddies. We were very, very close last year, and Cale was a late addition last year, and he just got a call from Tad, and he decided to, give hockey another shot, and then he worked his way up to an American League deal. So a guy like that, how can you not cheer for? And the entire year, there was no envy, there was no jealousy between us. We were each other's biggest supporters, and we tag team that playoff. And when you have another guy that is pushing you and challenging you, but also there to support you, it makes it such an easy process. And for the for the entire playoffs, we split time, and I would say we did a pretty good job. Obviously, the ultimate goal is to win, and we still talk about the loss, and now it eats us up a little bit. But it was a great opportunity, and it was a lot of fun, especially on that team. The goaltending situations, it's very delicate, right? Only one guy can play, and it's unique. It's not like many sports, right? While you are alone in the net, it's very individualistic, but again, you're a part of a team, you have to be a good teammate. But I think as a whole, that group was pretty special. And I'm not talking more on the ice, but away from the rink. Everyone was extremely close. We all had fun together. There was just never a dull moment when we came to that rink. And I think, when you're having fun and you share that passion within a group of people, your process and your goals only continue to excel. So I think everyone on an individual standard from across the board, they excelled. And then, from a team perspective, I think we surprised a lot of people. So
always a pleasure chatting with some of the guys coming up in the pipeline. And, I think that's important because not everyone that we talk to who's in the ECHL or the AHL is going to find their way to the Kraken roster for one game, let alone be, a Ty Cartier, a Riker Evans, or a Shane Wright like we're seeing this year. But if and when they do, we can say that we had them on Locked On Kraken. We knew them when. So really appreciative for Jack LaFontaine. Also, apologies. The audio was a little more echoey than I would have liked it to be. We are having some technical issues that day, but hope you enjoyed getting to know Jack a little bit better. So the Kansas City Mavericks, just getting into the swing of things, they're 2-0, as I mentioned, and they'll be taking on the Allen Americans this weekend on the road, 2 games, and that will be it until next week, which is next weekend, which is already Halloween weekend. The Kraken already had their Halloween party. It's Halloween weekend, and spooky season, or the back end of spooky season, means the Kansas City Mavericks are back home. So we're going to integrate more Mavericks coverage. We'll do our Firebird Fridays as well. Coming up, we'll have an interview with Jagger. We'll have an interview with Jagger Furcus for you. Got to talk to him at training camp as well, and we'll give you an update on how that team is doing. And of course, we know now Cale Fleury up. He's had a pretty significant game already this season for the Firebirds, and so we'll be able to see Cale with the Seattle Kraken likely until we get Vince Dunn back, but we'll see what happens there. So stay with us here. As always, be kind to yourself, be kind to one another, hold fast, stay true. And on Tuesday night, we get to say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.